From Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise today on behalf of the American taxpayer to continue my push to rein in federal spending by just 5%. As with the other appropriations bills that my colleagues and I have attempted to amend this year, this proposal would enforce a 5% across-the-board cut to the energy and water appropriations bill. My amendment would save the taxpayer $1.7 billion and reset the energy and water spending levels for the next budget. Spending on energy and water programs has increased by, get this, 183% over the past 3 years. Under the majority's control, spending has increased 183%. The very programs being funded on the House floor this afternoon have already received $51 billion in stimulus funding and $7 billion in supplemental funding this year. This 1 year. This Congress has already spent more than $1 trillion than we have taken in. This trillion-dollar deficit is the largest in American history. In my opinion, this deficit represents the height of fiscal irresponsibility and is absolutely unconscionable. On top of it, many of my colleagues are proposing another $1 trillion in government-run health care spending. Every day we are laying more and more debt on the backs of our children and grandchildren. I ask my colleagues, how do we expect these children and grandchildren? How do I expect my grandsons to pay for college, a first home, or start a business when they already owe $70,000 to the federal government? Mr. Speaker, we have to realize debt incurred is opportunity denied. My constituents keep telling me we're tired of the government spending money we have not made on programs we don't want. Through this approach cycle, I've intended to rein in this deficit by cutting spending, and today again I will ask the bureaucrats in Washington and their patrons in Congress to trim a nickel from every dollar that they are going to spend. As our deficit and our debt grow to historic and dangerous proportions, it is more urgent than ever that we take action and bring spending under control, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves the balance of her time. The gentleman from Arizona.
I rise in opposition to the amendment from the gentlelady from Tennessee.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
The amendment proposes a 5% reduction of every account in this bill. If you exclude the recovery money, as I mentioned in my opening statement, this bill that's before you is about $1 billion below the President's request and is slightly above last year's 2009 funding. And this energy water bill, appropriation bill, is a key part of ongoing efforts to meet the infrastructure needs of the country. And under years of neglect, addressing the inadequacies of our national energy policies, we're trying to do it with this bill. The energy and water bill is only slightly above last year's enacted level and is $1.1 billion below the budget request, as I mentioned. Balancing priorities with this allocation require a concerned bipartisan effort. We ended up with a bill that meets the priorities and supports fiscal responsibility. A reduction of 5% would cut $1.7 billion from the bill and undercut a number of priorities at a time when we can ill afford to reduce them further. I do not support the amendment and urge members to vote no. And I yield back my time. Yeah, I will yield to the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also rise in opposition to the amendment. Certainly I commend the Congresswoman, the gentlewoman, for her heart and her repeated attempts to cut the federal budget. But I agree with the chairman that we have a good bill. It's well balanced. It's been done in a bipartisan way. I worry about indiscriminate cuts to a bill that affects the protection and reliability of our nuclear stockpile. That's important. We've crafted some good things out of the energy portfolio, which I think are worthy and defensible. This bill also includes funding that only begins to address a $1 billion+ retirement pension shortfall through the individual accounts. that's something which I commend the chairman for his and staff leadership on. This across-the-board cut would take $1.6 billion bite across each of these initiatives, and I think that would be pretty devastating. And as a result, I rise with him to oppose this amendment. Thank you for yielding.
I would request members vote against this amendment, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his